My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 57 years old, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio. I've spent my whole life raising my children and caring for my family, but I never imagined the hardest pain would come from the ones I love most. I woke up that morning with a flutter of hope in my chest, the kind that makes your heart feel lighter even when your body feels heavy. It was my birthday, 57 this year, but I had told myself that it wouldn't matter. "It's just another day," I whispered to the empty kitchen as I brewed my coffee. Yet, deep down, I secretly hoped for a call, a text, maybe even a knock at the door. For decades, I had lived for my children. I had wiped tears, bandaged scraped knees, and stayed awake through fevers that lasted nights. I had been their chauffeur, their confidant, their unpaid therapist. I thought I had earned a place in their hearts, but that morning, I didn't hear a sound except for the hum of the refrigerator. I set the table for a small breakfast: 2 eggs, toast, coffee steaming in a chipped mug. I even placed a single candle in the middle, lighting it as if it would summon their presence. The flame flickered gently, casting shadows on the walls, and I imagined their faces leaning over the table, smiling, laughing. No one came. I waited until 10, then 11. My phone sat on the counter, silent. I tried calling my son. His voicemail picked up immediately. I left a cheerful message, careful not to let my voice betray the disappointment that was already twisting in my chest. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said aloud, practicing words I might never hear back. The silence answered me. By noon, I had begun the slow, creeping ache that is worse than a headache or a bad cold. It wasn't the emptiness of the house, it was the emptiness in their hearts for me. I made lunch for one, careful to prepare my favorite sandwich, as if by honoring myself I could fill the void they had left. I ate slowly, trying to make the taste linger, trying to convince myself that I was enough. But deep down, I knew I wasn't, not to them. As the afternoon sun spilled into the living room, I found myself sitting by the window, staring at the quiet street. I remembered the birthdays of their childhood, the messy icing, the cards they drew, the laughter that echoed through the house. And now, all that joy felt like a ghost haunting the rooms where it once lived. It was in that moment I realized something I had never fully admitted to myself. Heartbreak doesn't come from illness or poverty, from losing a job or missing a payment. Heartbreak comes from being invisible to the ones you raised, the ones you carried for 9 months, nurtured with your own blood and soul. It is a pain that no doctor can prescribe a cure for, a wound that doesn't heal with time. I spent the afternoon wandering through the house, touching things that once held meaning. A framed photo on the mantel caught my eye. My son at 7, grinning, frosting smeared across his face, holding a hand-decorated cake I had baked for him. I traced the frame with my finger, feeling the edges, wishing I could reach back to that time when he needed me, when our bond was simple and unbroken. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen counter, staring at the empty chairs. I thought about all the birthdays I had planned for him and his sister, the painstaking hours I spent baking, wrapping, and decorating. I remembered staying up late, making sure every detail was perfect, even when I was exhausted from working full-time and managing the house. All of it, the love, the care, the sleepless nights, was invisible now. It wasn't just today, it was a lifetime of small rejections, quietly stacked. Invitations that never came, phone calls I always made first, milestones they celebrated without me. I had brushed it off at first, telling myself that they were busy, that adulthood changed priorities. But today, with no one to even wish me happy birthday, the truth hit like a punch to the chest. My love had not been returned.
I walked into my son's old room, now empty, the walls still painted in shades he had once chosen. I sat on the bed and let the tears come. I had tried so hard to teach them the meaning of family, of respect, of loyalty. And yet here I was, ignored, as though I were nothing more than a shadow in their lives. The ache in my chest was sharp, more than any physical pain I had ever known. I tried to distract myself, picking up a stack of birthday cards I had kept from years ago. Each one was a reminder of a past when they had wanted me around, when my presence mattered. I read them slowly, the handwriting shaky or messy, the words imperfect but filled with love. And then I realized the love had disappeared, leaving only memories that now seemed cruel, teasing me with what was no longer real. By late afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. I passed families laughing, kids running with balloons, neighbors greeting each other warmly. Each scene pierced me like a knife. I thought about the sacrifices I had made, the endless hours of care, the birthdays, holidays, and simple dinners I had poured myself into. And yet here I was, invisible. I found a bench in the small park nearby and sat, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup as if it could anchor me. I thought about what I had once feared, losing my job, losing money, falling ill. But those fears felt trivial now. The real pain, I realized, is being unloved by the very people whose love you spent a lifetime giving. It is a hollow ache that no comfort can fill, a quiet despair that seeps into every corner of your soul. As I sat there, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I made a quiet vow to myself. I would survive this. I would find ways to feel whole again, even if my children could not give me the love I needed. But I could not ignore the truth. Today, I had been abandoned, not by the world, not by circumstance, but by the very people who should have held my heart. By the time I returned home from the park, the house felt colder than it had that morning. The soft hum of the air conditioner did nothing to chase away the silence that had settled like dust over every room. I walked slowly, touching the backs of the chairs, the edges of tables, as though physical contact might remind me that I still existed, even if my children had forgotten me. I pulled out my phone again, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through old messages. There were texts I had sent weeks ago. Thinking of you. Hope work is going well. Love you, Mom. All left unread. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to demand attention, but I only whispered into the empty room. Why do you not care? Memories of the past kept surfacing, each one a dagger hidden in velvet. I remembered the nights I stayed awake, my hand resting on his back as he cried through nightmares. I remembered driving across town to pick him up when he missed the bus, even when I was exhausted from work and barely able to keep my eyes open. I remembered the scraped knees, the broken hearts, the first school plays, the scraped knees again, and always, always me there, ready with bandages, tissues, and comfort. And now, not even a text, not even a call. I sank onto the couch and hugged a pillow tightly, letting the tears come freely. It wasn't the loneliness of being alone. It was worse. It was the betrayal of a lifetime of love that went unreturned. I had worried once about money, about whether I could keep the house, about illnesses that might strike me down. But today, I understood that no financial hardship or sickness could compare to the agony of being ignored by your own child. Hours passed, The sky outside darkened, the street lights flickered on, and still there was no knock at the door, no ring of the phone. I imagined him, my son, maybe sitting at his desk, scrolling on his phone, completely unaware of the world I had built for him and the emptiness I now carried. Each imagined scene was a fresh wound, a new proof that I was no longer a presence in his life. I thought about calling him again, about demanding an explanation, about telling him how deeply he had hurt me, but my voice caught in my throat. I had tried reasoning for years, had reminded him of the value of family, of love, of attention, and now there was nothing left but despair. I went into the kitchen and made a small dinner, enough for one. I sat at the table, staring at the empty chairs opposite me. I couldn't eat. The food tasted of ash and disappointment. I had cooked for them so many times, for birthdays, holidays, ordinary nights, pouring love into every meal, and now it was for me alone, a reminder that my presence no longer mattered. As I washed the dishes afterward, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me looked older, smaller somehow, weighed down by something heavier than age or fatigue. I realized then that the deepest pain isn't about money or illness or being alone. The deepest pain is seeing yourself ignored by those you loved most. The betrayal stings not because it's cruel, but because it's real, and there is no remedy for a heart that is invisible to its own children. I went to bed that night feeling hollow, wrapped in blankets that did nothing to comfort me. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of the heating system. I held on to a memory of him as a boy, hoping it might keep me warm. But even as I closed my eyes, I knew the truth I had been avoiding all day. Today, on my birthday, I had lost not a day, but a piece of my heart, and it wasn't coming back. The next morning, I woke with a dull ache in my chest, a lingering shadow from the day before. I tried to shake it off, telling myself that maybe today would be different. Maybe he would call or even send a message, but deep down, I already knew better. I made coffee and opened the blinds. The morning light fell softly across the living room, but it did nothing to lift the heaviness in my heart. I thought about the life I had built, the sacrifices I had made, and the endless days I had spent caring for others, and yet none of it mattered now. My son had chosen a life without me, and my presence seemed irrelevant, almost invisible. I decided to tidy the house, hoping that keeping busy would help. I dusted the shelves, rearranged the cushions on the sofa, and washed the few dishes left in the sink. But every movement reminded me of him, of the absence where he should have been. Each room echoed with memories, the birthday cakes, the school projects, the scraped knees I had kissed better, and now all of it felt like it had never mattered. I tried calling him again mid-morning, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, careful not to let my pain show, but my voice trembled despite my efforts. "Happy belated birthday, Mom," I told myself I would say if he finally called, but I knew he wouldn't. I knew that the day before had already revealed the truth. I was no longer a priority in his life. I went to my neighbor's house for a brief visit, hoping for some distraction, some small human connection. We talked about mundane things, the weather, the neighborhood, the grocery store. But even in conversation, I felt a hollow space inside me that no words could fill. The friendly smiles and polite chatter only reminded me how empty the silence from my own child felt. Returning home, I sat by the window watching families walk by, hand in hand, laughing, talking, sharing moments I would never share with him again. I thought about the years of care and attention, of love poured into raising him, and how it had been repaid with silence. The world outside seemed bright and full of life, yet I felt like a ghost, unseen and unvalued. By late afternoon, the weight of my thoughts pressed down so heavily that I could barely move.
I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair opposite me. I remembered a time when he had eagerly awaited my attention, when my presence brought him joy. I longed for that again, but I realized with a sharp pang that time had moved forward without me. My son had grown up, and in doing so had left me behind. I felt anger rise alongside the sadness. How could someone I had devoted my life to, someone I had loved unconditionally, treat me as though I did not exist? I thought of the sleepless nights, the endless worry, the years of sacrifices I had made. And yet, here I was, invisible, my love unacknowledged, my heart aching in silence. That evening, I sat alone with a small slice of cake I had baked the day before. The candle from my birthday still stood, flickering softly in the dim light. I made a quiet wish, not for him to call, not for apologies, but for the strength to survive this pain, to find a way to feel whole again despite being unloved. And in that quiet, dimly lit kitchen, I understood the harsh truth. No amount of money, health, or comfort could heal the wound of being ignored by the ones you raised. The deepest pain comes not from loss or hardship, but from the absence of love where it should have been. The next morning, I woke again to silence. My phone had not rung, no messages appeared overnight. For a moment, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my own heartbeat in the stillness. The ache in my chest was familiar now, like a stubborn shadow that would not leave, but something else stirred, a faint, hesitant determination. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, not for him, not for anyone, but for myself. I poured it slowly, savoring the warmth between my hands. I realized I had spent so many years measuring my worth by their attention, their approval, their love. And now, with that gone, I had to confront a truth I had long avoided. My value was not tied to their acknowledgement. Sitting by the window, I watched the street awaken. Children rode bikes, parents walked dogs, and life moved on with an ease I envied. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made, all the sleepless nights, all the celebrations planned and forgotten. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of pride. I had done my best. I had loved fully, without condition. That love was mine, and no silence could erase it. I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. The neighborhood was familiar, yet today it felt different. I noticed small things I had overlooked, the flowers blooming along the sidewalk, the sound of wind in the trees, the gentle chatter of neighbors greeting each other. Life, I realized, still had beauty, even if my children could not share it with me. As I walked, I replayed moments with my son. I remembered the first time he rode a bike without training wheels, the first day of school, the countless bedtime stories. Each memory brought a pang of longing, but also a reminder. I had given him everything I could, and while that love had not been returned in the way I hoped, it had shaped him, just as it had shaped me. Returning home, I sat at my kitchen table, writing in a notebook I had kept tucked away for years. I wrote down my feelings, my anger, my grief, and my love. The words poured out, unfiltered and raw. For the first time in a long while, I felt heard, not by them, but by myself. The act of acknowledging my pain, of honoring my own emotions, gave me a small, fragile sense of relief. I realized that survival didn't mean forgetting or forgiving what had hurt me. It meant finding a way to live with the pain without letting it define me. It meant building a life where my happiness did not rely solely on their love. The thought was frightening, but also strangely liberating. That evening, I sat in my living room, candlelight flickering, a small piece of cake beside me. I whispered to myself, "I am still here. I am still whole." The words felt foreign, yet powerful. For the first time in days, I allowed myself a small smile, not because the world had changed or because my son had called,
but because I had begun to reclaim myself. The pain would not disappear, it would linger like a scar, but I had discovered something new. Even when unloved by those we care for most, we can find fragments of love within ourselves. And perhaps, in time, those fragments could grow, slowly, into something strong enough to carry us forward. The following days passed quietly. I kept up with my routines, tending to the house, watering the small garden I loved, making coffee for myself in the morning without waiting for anyone to join me. At first it felt hollow, like performing motions in a world that had lost color. But slowly I noticed small things that brought a flicker of warmth. The scent of fresh soil, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, the way the breeze rustled the leaves outside. I began to write more in my notebook, letting my thoughts flow freely. I wrote letters I never intended to send, telling my son about my love, my pain, my hope. Some letters ended in tears, others in long silences where I simply acknowledged that the words may never reach him. And yet, writing them made me feel lighter, as though sharing my heart, even on paper, could fill some of the emptiness inside me. One afternoon, I ventured to the small community center a few blocks away. I had avoided it for years, thinking it was a place for others, not someone like me. But today, I felt a quiet curiosity, a fragile desire to see if life still had room for me beyond my home. I sat in a circle of people sharing stories, nodding politely, occasionally offering a smile. It was awkward at first, my words stumbling, my voice soft, but slowly people responded warmly, listening with patience, acknowledging my feelings without judgment. It was a small revelation. Connection could still exist outside my children. Love could be found even in tiny increments, in moments of shared attention and understanding. I felt a spark of hope, fragile but present. I realized that my son's indifference could not be undone. I could create spaces where my heart mattered, even if only to others who needed kindness as much as I did.
At home, I began to notice my own resilience. I made meals I loved, decorated the house in ways that pleased me, and even started reading novels I had put aside for years. Each small action was a reclaiming of myself, a declaration that my life did not end with their absence. I would always carry the ache of being ignored, but I could also carry the pride of surviving, of being more than the reflection of their love. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I allowed myself to smile at the memory of my son as a little boy, running through the yard with a laugh I would never forget. The memory was bittersweet, a reminder of what I had lost, but also of what I had given. I whispered to the evening sky, "I loved you all my life, and I am still here." The candle from my birthday still stood in the kitchen, now a symbol not of disappointment, but of endurance. It reminded me that I had survived a day of heartbreak and could face the next one. And maybe, someday, my children would remember me not just for the love I gave them, but for the strength I found within myself when that love went unreturned. A week after my birthday, I finally mustered the courage to reach out to my son, not to scold him, not to demand an explanation, but to speak my truth. I called him, my fingers trembling as I held the phone to my ear. His voicemail picked up again, the familiar message filling the silence with a cold inevitability. I sat down on the couch, the phone still in my hand, and let the tears come. I realized then that no call, no apology, no explanation could erase the hurt. The pain was real, and it belonged to me. I didn't need his acknowledgement to validate it. I didn't need his love to prove that I was worthy. That truth was harsh, but it was also freeing. For the first time, I understood that my heart could survive, even when those I loved the most turned away. I spent the afternoon writing another letter, one I knew I would never send. I told him about my birthday, about the ache of silence, about the years of love that had gone unnoticed. And then I wrote the part that was hardest, that I would not let his absence define my life anymore. I told him that I loved him, that I always would, but that I would also love myself in ways he had never allowed me to. Later that evening, I walked to the park again. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of early spring. Families played in the distance, children's laughter drifting to me on the wind. And for the first time, I felt a sense of calm. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had changed shape. It was no longer a hollow despair. It was a reminder of the depth of my love and of the strength it had given me to endure. I stopped by a bench and sat, watching the sunset streak the sky in shades of orange and pink. I thought about the life I had built, the love I had given, and the resilience I had found within myself. I whispered to the fading light, "I am still here. I am enough." In that moment, I realized that the deepest heartbreak, being unloved by my children, could coexist with the quiet triumph of survival. I could honor the love I had given, acknowledge the pain I carried, and still choose to move forward. The world outside was full of life, and I was still part of it, not defined by absence, not diminished by neglect, but whole in my own right. I returned home and lit the candle from my birthday once more. It flickered softly, a symbol of endurance, of hope, and of love that remained steadfast even when unreturned. I didn't know what the future held, whether my son would ever reach out, whether reconciliation was possible, but I knew this: I would continue to live, to love myself, and to carry my own heart with the care it deserved. That night, I went to bed with a quiet sense of peace. The house was still, but my heart felt lighter. I had faced the void left by those I loved, and I had survived. And in that survival, I found a new kind of love, the unwavering love of a mother for herself, resilient and unbroken, even in the absence of those she had given everything to. I lingered on a photo of him at 8, grinning from ear to ear, holding a handmade card that said, "Mom, you're the best." The words made my chest ache. I had given everything to those moments, and now, decades later, they felt almost like relics from another life. I traced his smiling face with my finger and whispered, "I loved you then. I love you still." Memories of sacrifices came rushing back. The nights I stayed up sewing Halloween costumes, the afternoons I drove him to countless piano lessons, the early mornings making lunches and rushing to work. I remembered the countless times I had rearranged my own schedule to be there for him. Each memory was bittersweet, joy intertwined with sorrow, love tinged with disappointment. Yet, as I sat there flipping through the album, I realized something profound. Those years, filled with love and care, had shaped not only him, but me. They were proof of the strength and dedication that had always been a part of me. My identity wasn't erased by his absence. It had been forged in those countless acts of love. I set the album aside and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The neighborhood felt alive, children on their bikes, neighbors chatting on porches. I walked slowly, taking in the details I had long overlooked: the smell of fresh-cut grass, the chatter of birds, the soft warmth of sunlight on my face. For the first time in weeks, I felt the world around me in a way that wasn't colored entirely by grief. Back home, I tended my garden. The tulips I had planted the previous year were blooming, their bright petals resilient and unyielding. I thought about myself as a mother, as a woman, and realized that, like these flowers, I too could grow, even in the harshest conditions. The thought brought a small, fragile smile to my face. A few days later, I received a call, not from my son, but from a neighbor I had known for years. We had shared friendly conversations over the fence, casual check-ins, but nothing deep. Yet that morning, she asked if I wanted to join her for coffee. I hesitated, thinking of my own self-imposed isolation, but eventually agreed. Sitting in the small cafe, listening to her talk about her life, I realized how much I had missed these ordinary connections. Sharing a laugh, a complaint, or even just a quiet moment of listening was comforting in a way I hadn't realized I craved. For the first time in a long while, I felt part of a community again. On my walk home, I noticed children playing with their mothers in a nearby park. I smiled quietly, a pang of longing still in my chest, but also a newfound warmth. Life had continued for them, just as it had for me. I didn't have to be defined solely by absence. I could carve out moments of connection and joy for myself. At home, I lit my birthday candle once again, not as a reminder of what was missing, but as a symbol of continuity, endurance, and the love I had nurtured within myself. The flame flickered, soft and steady, like a heartbeat I could feel in my own chest. Weeks passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. The ache of my birthday remained, a dull echo in my chest, but it no longer defined my every thought. I still thought of my son daily, still wondered why he had chosen distance over connection, but the sharp, raw edges of despair had softened, replaced by a quiet, steady awareness of my own strength. I began to notice my own presence in ways I had long overlooked. I lingered in the mornings over my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my hands. I read books I had postponed for decades, losing myself in stories that expanded my world beyond my empty house. I tended my garden with care, marveling at the tiny shoots that emerged, proof that life persists even after harsh winters. One afternoon, I found myself organizing my old birthday cards and letters. Each one carried a memory, a moment of love that had once been returned. I smiled at the childish handwriting, the awkward drawings, and even the misspelled words. They were proof not of what I had lost, but of what I had given, and that giving had value in itself. I sat by the window that evening, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky turned shades of gold and pink, and I felt a sense of peace I had not known in weeks. The silence of the house was no longer oppressive. It was simply the world waiting, patiently, for me to continue living. I thought again of my son, of the life he was living without me. The longing remained, yes, but it was tempered now by understanding. I could not force love where it did not exist. I could only honor the love I had to give and protect the love I had for myself. That night, I lit my birthday candle one last time. I watched it flicker, steady and resilient. The flame reminded me that even in darkness there is light. Even in loneliness, there is the capacity for warmth, for hope, for life. I whispered into the quiet room, I am here. I am enough. For the first time, I truly believed it. I went to bed with a calm heart. I knew that tomorrow I would wake again and life would continue, still imperfect, still tinged with loss, but also filled with moments I could shape, moments I could claim as mine. I had faced the deepest ache a mother can feel, being unloved by the children she had given her life to, And though the wound would never fully vanish, I had discovered something enduring, the strength to carry on, the courage to love myself, and the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I was more than the absence of their affection. And so, I slept,